Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Anthony Kraus, and on behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you have joined us for our next live presentation from Fathom Nickel Inc. Please note, you can submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings through the Schedule Meetings tab found on the conference platform. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Ian Fraser, CEO, VP Exploration, and Director of Fathom Nickel Inc., which trades on the OTCQB venture market under the symbol FNICF and on the CSE under the symbol FNI. Welcome, Ian.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much to the OTC for having me, and to the audience out there taking part in this webinar. My name is Ian Fraser. I'm the CEO and Vice President of Exploration of Fathom Nickel Inc. We are an exploration, resource, and development company focused on two emerging nickel districts in the province of Saskatchewan, Canada. This is your typical notice to reader. But a little bit more about the company. We are focused on nickel. There is an increasing demand to secure a North American supply of nickel along with other critical metals. With our nickel districts, we have associated copper, cobalt, and in one particular project, platinum group elements as well. And to differentiate ourselves from laterite style of nickel, these are class 1 magmatic nickel deposits that we are currently working on. The province of Saskatchewan, just a tremendous jurisdiction. Most of my exploration career has been in the province of Saskatchewan, and nothing but very, very favorable things to say about the wonderful province of Saskatchewan. The company itself, relatively new. We became a public company in the spring of 2021. We set out to raise $3 to $5 million with our IPO. We managed to close on $11 million. There was a bit of nickel euphoria going on in the spring of 2021, and we were fortunate to take advantage of that timing. And since then, we've been very, very aggressively raising more funds and allocating these capitals to exploration at both the the Albert Lake project and the Goshager Lake project. This particular slide here, this is why do we do this? I mentioned that this ever increasing demand to find alternative ways to green the economy, and nickel and copper and cobalt and the platinum group elements are certainly all part of that formula. But I really want to emphasize the value of these deposits. And really, there hasn't been, the Voisey's Bay is sort of the last major, very, very big nickel discovery in North America back in the 1990s. And of course, Inco purchased that at a $4.3 billion price tag. More recently, Wyloo has purchased the Eagle's Nest deposit in the Ring of Fire in Northern Ontario. And the price tag there is $617 million. And another very, very famous magmatic style of nickel is the Nova Bollinger. And the buyout price there was 1.88 billion Australian dollars. So these things have incredible value. And if you note, there's certainly the Eagle Mine in Michigan, a little bit smaller in size, but it is producing. But there really aren't, Voisey's Bay and perhaps the Eagle, these, along with the existing mining camps, those are really the only two major nickel discoveries in North America. And what I'd like to point out here is when you look at the grades of the three deposits at the top that I alluded to, and you look at the grade of the historic Rottenstone mine, this is on our Albert Lake property. It was in production in the mid-1960s. These grades, and if I can also bring your attention to the grades that we're intersecting with our work that we've done thus far at the Goshager Lake project, these are comparable nickel grades with associated copper, cobalt, and as I mentioned, in the case of Albert Lake, significant PGE. So this is why we're doing this, because these things have tremendous value in terms of shareholder value, and certainly in terms of when these things come into production, certainly good jobs will be the end result. So this is why we're looking for magmatic nickel sulfide deposits in the province of Saskatchewan. Just a bit of a currently we have 140 million shares outstanding. As of right now, we've got roughly $700,000 in the bank. You can see the cap table. We do have a little bit of a warrant hangover. These are all exercisable at 20 cents. So, we've got a bit of a built-in finance there if we can get our share price back up to where it was a year ago. But, I think just clearly, as the chart on the right shows, we've been in a little bit of a depressed nickel market. Nickel tends to be very, very cyclic. I think we were bouncing around a little bit last year. We fell off towards the end of 2023, us and the price of nickel. We had a little bit of a bump early in the year, and it's since come back down again. But I think overall, the long-term outlook, and this is where we stay focused, is the long-term outlook for nickel and supplying nickel for North America. And we need to be well positioned when we see a rebound in the price of nickel, which I think is not too far away. So our portfolio of companies, we have three. Recently, we added a third. The largest that you see on the insert map in the middle, that is the Albert Lake project. That's well over 90,000 hectares. This is home to the historic Rottenstone mine. Very, very small production in the mid-1960s, 1965 through 1969. But I've got to draw your attention to these grades: 3.3% nickel, 1.8 copper, and 9 grams platinum, palladium, plus gold. These are spectacular magmatic nickel sulfide types of grades, and it's very uncommon to get the amount of platinum group elements associated with nickel as we see here. There are a few other places in the world where you get these very, very high grade PGE numbers, but Rottenstone is certainly right up there at the top with some of the most prolific deposits of this type around the world. So we've been very, very active exploring there. We have made a new discovery 500 meters away northwest of the historic Rottenstone deposit. This is very, very significant because it's proof of concept that this tiny little deposit that was known about since 1929, that being the Rottenstone deposit, is not all by itself. It's part of a large magmatic system. We're currently focused in an area to the south where we have multiple targets, and we feel we're getting very, very close to replicating Rottenstone type grades. The project at the bottom is the Goshager Lake project. Here we're just over 22,000 hectares. We've been actively exploring there since the fall of 2022. And here too, there's some history. There was a deposit defined 1966 through 1968, actually by a Calgary-based oil company. They defined roughly 4.3 million tons at a grade of 0.295% nickel and 0.08% copper. They recognized that there was cobalt, but they didn't put a cobalt credit to this resource. And that is something that I'll be alluding to here very, very shortly. We drilled our first hole in February of 2023, our drill hole GL23003, 58 meters of 1.5% nickel, 0.38% copper, and 0.11% cobalt. That garnered us a lot of attention. It was actually ranked as the 8th best nickel intercept in 2023 by the Northern Miner. And since then, we've had in total 3 drilling campaigns, 2023 through 2024. And we feel we have really put ourselves in a position where we understand the dynamics of this deposit and put ourselves in really good position to expand on tons and grade at this historic resource. Third property, Friesen Lake, just over 10,000 hectares. Here too, there are some known nickel, copper, and platinum group element showings. Quickly pass through here. Just a quick comment. The board, lots of experience in junior exploration through financing, and in particular, the next step when we feel that we're in a position to liquidate an asset. There is experience on the board with this sort of transaction as well. So our focus over the next 12 months is going to be the Goshager Lake property. And what's attracted us, I mentioned the resource 1967 through 1968, but drill hole number I-12, a vertical drill hole at 290 meters of 0.58% nickel, 0.11% copper. But within that, there was a very high grade section, 9.7 meters of 2.4 nickel, 0.35 copper. And here you can see this very, very good cobalt number of 0.14. And it's interesting to point out 10 kilometers to the southeast, again, 1967 drilling, nothing's been done there since. 1.11% nickel, 0.24 copper over a drill hole intercept of 7.9 meters. We've recently done some work on the historic drill core that is being supplied in La Ronge, or stored in La Ronge, and we recognize that there is cobalt in here as well, doing some PXRF analysis. And further work, we're recognizing similar nickel tenors, and we're recognizing similar host lithology. So we think that this is part of a very, very big, large magmatic system at the Goshager Lake project. Coincidentally, there's some VMS, and which is a very good thing, because if you look at Snow Lake relative to the Thompson Nickel Belt, VMS mineralization at Snow Lake, the Ring of Fire in Northern Ontario, the Wyloo deposit, the Eagle's Nest, there's significant VMS associated in the general vicinity. So I think this bodes well for the overall prospectivity, but it's always a good sign when there's lots of mineralization going on. The rectangle, that is a 2008 VTEM survey. It was flown, no follow-up. We have taken that data and generated multiple targets. The work that we have done, 2023 through 2024, 16 drill holes, just over 5,000 meters. And as I said, we've really put ourselves in a position to advance this thing significantly as we go forward. And utilizing borehole EM has been a tremendous tool. It is guiding us to where some of the higher grade material is located. So following that first hole, 23003, we needed to get ourselves oriented with a fall program in 2023. We're looking at a plan map on the left. This is the plan map from the 2024 drilling. The long section, you can see all our pierce points of drilling 2023 through 2024. The takeaway here is our work has been concentrated in an area about 230 meters in strike, and we've extended this historic deposit at least 100 meters to depth, and it's wide open. So we now have mineralization, high-grade mineralization north of 1% at depths down to greater than 400 meters below surface. So this is new. So not only are we open to depth, this deposit is significantly open along strike, in particular to the northeast, but also to the southwest. The rectangles that you see here, these are borehole EM off-hole anomalies that remain to be tested by drilling. Our hole number 9 that we drilled in 2023, it was a follow-up to an off-hole borehole EM anomaly, and it was very, very successful in identifying magmatic sulfide breccias running better than 1% nickel. The plan map that I showed, our decision in 2024 was to drill this thing at a consistent azimuth from northwest to southeast. So we're now drilling across what is turning out to be a somewhat chaotic, and chaos is good, a multiple intrusive type of setting. We feel we are more perpendicular to the strike of this overall package of lithology. And importantly, we've identified what we call a variable textured gabbro that's up to 100 meters in thick. And it's within this gabbro that we recognize these higher grade shoots of semi-massive to massive sulfide breccias, as evidenced by these 3 photographs. So this style of mineralization does provide a tremendous conductor. So if you happen to drill a hole and there's this semi-massive to massive sulfide off to the left or off to the right or below or above a particular drill hole, the borehole EM tool will detect that and we follow up with the drill bit. And just sort of our, with our ongoing interpretation, what I think is important here, you'll notice that the red zones, these are our zones of elevated sulfide mineralization, and certainly, where we have this 2.28% nickel over 3.96 meters. This is occurring very close to what we call the footwall contact of this variable textured gabbro with yet another phase of this mineralization. And typically these pools, these sulfides, they need to get themselves stuck in some kind of a structural trap. And this footwall contact is a perfect place for a buildup of semi-massive to massive sulfides. So it's really opened up the potential along this contact to find zones of semi-massive to massive sulfide. And one other point I might make is this mineralization that you see in the very, very top core box. We know now that this has been remobilized. This is cutting across the variable textured gabbro. So the fact that it's been remobilized, it's coming from another pool of semi-massive to massive sulfides that's somewhere within this variable textured gabbro. So here too is another clue of the tremendous potential and upside to expand on tons and grade of this historic deposit. The table on the right-hand side is just a summary of our drill intercepts to date, 2023, 2024, highlighting. And it's just important to point out these two box diagrams on the left. The message here is the amount of pentlandite occurring, the amount of nickel occurring in the nickel sulfide pentlandite at Goshager is comparable to Norilsk, Sudbury, Thompson, and Boise's Bay. But what's unique about Goshager is we have up to 6 times more cobalt in the pentlandite than, say, compared to places like Norilsk in the Sudbury mining camp, the Thompson camp, Boise's Bay, where roughly 1.5 to 2 times more cobalt with our nickel. So this is a very, very important sort of metallurgical feature. And I think if we can do our job properly and demonstrate that there's significant tons in grade, this is going to be a very, very attractive concentrate for somebody down the road. And I mentioned Mall Lake. I just wanted to quickly demonstrate that we have, via PXRF, recognized that there is cobalt mineralization associated with Mall Lake. Again, Mall Lake is 10 kilometers to the southeast of the historic Goshager Lake deposit. And we know that magmatic nickel sulfide deposits typically tend to occur in clusters, and not usually by themselves. There's usually several. And the fact that we've got this 10 kilometers to the southeast and all of the metallurgical, the metallogeny signals are comparable to Goshager makes us think that this is potentially all coming from a common magmatic source. So this is potentially very, very significant on a regional scale. The VTEM data that we've reinterpreted, this 2008 geophysical survey, these yellow polygons, these are all geophysical targets that we need to get to that have a very, very comparable signal as we recognize at Goshager Lake. And yeah, so just briefly to summarize Goshager Lake, we just really feel that in a short period of time, we've really advanced this thing significantly. We understand the dynamics of the deposit. The fact that we have these semi-massive to massive sulfide remobilized breccias and veins and chutes is telling us that there is another significant prize there. There will be either multiple pools of massive sulfide within the variable textured gabbro, and potentially something at depth or somewhere along strike is the ultimate feeder to all of this. So this is how we're going to focus our exploration going forward. I mentioned earlier that it's wide open to depth, certainly wide open along strike. What we're currently doing is we're going to be putting a camp out at Goshager Lake. That'll start in August, a 20 to 25 person all-season camp. We're permitted to drill up to 60 drill holes, 10 to 15,000 meters over the next 2 years. We're very much looking forward to getting at that. The Mall Lake is sort of opening up our eyes to the blue sky potential. And I just, one final comment, the borehole EM, the fact that we have all of this wonderful geology, but we also have mineralization that has a tremendous EM signal. We can utilize borehole EM as we go forward. It will point us to the zones of higher grade nickel, copper, cobalt mineralization. The second project, the Albert Lake project, again, this Rottenstone mine in production 1965 through 1969. It was estimated there was only 50 to 60,000 tons of this ultramafic intrusive that was sticking up out of the ground. An aggressive group went in there in the mid-1960s and decided to mine it as a summer operation, mined and milled, and then shipped the concentrate all the way to Inco's facility in Coppercliff, Ontario for final refinement. We've drilled over 12,000 meters now. I mentioned that we made that discovery we call the Bay Island Trend. We've also extended the historic deposit to the south with our drill hole 2024, 1% nickel, 0.88 copper, 4 grams of platinum group elements, over 7.5 meters. And this is roughly 40 meters to the south. So they did not get all of that deposit. But importantly, this discovery, 500 meters to the northwest, west-northwest, the Bay Island Trend. Here we have recognized 300 plus meters of mineralized ultramafic rock, albeit of lower grade and lower tenor. These two photographs that you see here, the drill core on the bottom, that is from our hole number 52, this classic net textured matrix style of mineralization that runs over 1% nickel over 3.5 meters. And you can see how it compares to a typical net textured sulfide rock that came out of the historic Rottenstone mine. This picture up in the top left corner, you can see, we ran this as part of a bulk sample test, 4% nickel, 1.38% copper. So again, the tenors that came out of the historic Rottenstone deposit are significantly higher than we recognize at the Bay Island Trend, but the Bay Island Trend tells us we're in a large magmatic system, and we're currently focusing our attention in this area to the south that we call the Trombley-Olson Nic 5 area. The middle photograph, or the middle, the middle image is a soil geochemical, the results of soil geochemical survey, and particularly we're looking at chrome. The brighter magentas are the upper 90th percentile of chrome in soils. The left-hand side, we're looking, when we've mapped, the darker blue is the greater than 90th percentile of nickel in soil. Here we're getting 743 parts per million nickel in the soils. We have individual samples that ran over a gram of combined platinum, palladium plus gold. And I could show copper, I could show cobalt. They all stack up beautifully in this area that we call the Trombley-Olson Nic 5, which is roughly 1.5 kilometers south of the Rottenstone mine. But also important to point out that there is a soil geochem anomaly directly over and above the Bay Island Trend. So this area west-northwest of the historic Rottenstone mine, we see nickel in soils, we see chrome in soils, platinum, palladium, the full suite of elements light up above the Bay Island Trend. So that makes us feel that there's something of significance buried below this soil geochemical anomaly in the area of the Nic 5 Trombley-Olson. Recent drilling in the winter of 2024, we were targeting a deep-seated conductor, very, very strong EM conductor. That was our hole number 75. We intersected significant sulfide in that drill hole, but it was hosted in sediments, and the sulfides were barren with respect to nickel. We pivoted the drill program slightly, and we got a little bit more focused on this soil geochemical anomaly. And to sort of highlight the drill program itself, multiple shallow borehole EM anomalies were detected in holes number 76 through 79, actually. But importantly, hole number 77, at a depth down hole, roughly 24 meters down hole, we had roughly 4.5 meters of ultramafic rock that you see pictured bottom center here. And the significance here is this is an orthoperoxenite, which is the host rock at the historic Rottenstone mine to the northeast. But in hole 77, we had individual assays of 0.9% nickel within this 4.5 meters, which was really staggering because there was very little sulfide in this interval. But there was sulfide in sufficient quantity that we could do our nickel tenor calculations. And, what really surprised us, and it has us really encouraged, is this particular intersection in hole 77 has a nickel tenor of 10 to 12%. The Rottenstone mine, the Rottenstone deposit, has a nickel tenor of 10 to 12%. So we use nickel tenor as a vectoring tool to zero in on zones of high-grade nickel. For comparison, the Bay Island Trend has a nickel tenor of roughly 2%. Some intersections that were made north of the historic Rottenstone deposit have nickel tenors anywhere from 6 to 10%. So our takeaway here is hole number 77 is telling us we're close to something very, very Rottenstone-like. It is buried below this soil geochemical anomaly, and in fact I think hole 77 validates this soil geochem anomaly. So we need to get back in there. We need to follow up on some of these borehole EM anomalies. More drilling, obviously, required, but we feel Goshagar Lake, the Albert Lake project, tremendous potential to find significant Class 1 magmatic nickel sulfide deposits in the wonderful province of Saskatchewan. I'll end the presentation there. Thank you very much, and I will go to the Q&A. The first question I see is in regards to a comparison from magmatic nickel sulfide deposits versus Indonesian sourced nickel. As I mentioned, we are magmatic sulfide. The nickel that comes out of Indonesia is laterite. And to get the laterite in Indonesia, they are literally mowing down the forest. And then they go in there with shovels and trucks. And it's a tremendously environmentally damaging way to produce nickel. There's been a lot of talk on Bloomberg on the deforestation of Indonesia. And in fact, they're building more coal-fired power plants so that they can generate enough power to separate the nickel from the laterite. It's a very, very intensive energy project to get the nickel out of laterite. To compare, when our deposits come into production in the future, they will most likely be potentially a small open pit to start with a decline of some sort at the bottom. But just, Canadians are good, or North Americans are very, very good at mining things in an environmentally and responsible way. And I think that really is the biggest difference between magmatic nickel sulfide deposits. The footprints aren't as big compared to laterite and that style of nickel mineralization. With respect to what we have going forward, yes, we very much want to get back out to the Goshagar Lake. We are currently exploring all avenues to finance what we need to do to make a fall drill program happen. It's something that we are extremely currently focused on, and we feel very, very strongly that we're going to make it happen. With respect to drilling costs, very, very good question. At Albert Lake and Goshagar, we've actually been utilizing helicopters. And with the camp at Goshagar Lake that we're going to be building here in August, we're going to eliminate the need as much as possible for the helicopter. And we feel that's going to have probably $100 to $150 per meter all-in cost benefit to us. Currently, these helicopter-supported projects are running $500 to $600 bucks a meter all in. That's all in cost. And by reducing the dependency on the helicopter, we like to think we can get that down to $450 to $550 range. So it will be a significant advantage to us going forward. With respect to full-time employees at Fathom Nickel, I'd have to say two. Myself and my partner, Doug Porter, the CFO and president. We're a lean and mean machine. We do have consultants helping us with the exploration in the field and with some of our marketing initiatives. Since inception, we have raised north of $24 million. With respect to outstanding options and warrants, yes, warrants begin to expire in 2025. There's roughly 53 million warrants outstanding, all at an exercisable price in and around 20 cents. And I believe that is all the questions. Again, thank you very much for everybody